Welcome, everyone. My name is Jo Delamore, and I represent the Work That Reconnects Network. Thank you so much for joining us for the Webinars and Conversation Cafe series, where we're offering a wide range of rich educational and supportive opportunities for our global community of Work That Reconnects facilitators, members, and friends of the network. Our intention is to strengthen the web of the Work That Reconnects community while continually reaching beyond our current edges to weave deeper connections with others who are contributing to the great turning in diverse and complementary ways. Today, we are continuing our exploration into de-escalating patterns of harm in white dominant spaces. And this webinar is being facilitated by Aravinda Ananda, Tsiping Chen, Mutima Imani, Joe Hamilton, and Jane Hara. As members of the Anti-Oppression Resource Group, they have participated in the development of several vital resources for integrating an undoing oppression approach to the Work That Reconnects. And in this event, we'll be diving deeper into one of these valuable resources in this community discussion. So welcome so much. Thank you.
And just like the other webinar, we're going to start with what we call a diversity welcome. And that I'm going to read to you. Let us all welcome people of African descent, of Asian descent, of European descent, of First Nations descent in this space, people of all backgrounds and ethnicities, people of mixed and multiple descents, and all of the languages spoken here. White-bodied and people of the global majority, let us all say welcome.
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 People on all parts of the continuum of gender identity and sexual expression, lesbian, gay, bisexual, heterosexual, transgender, gender-fluid and non-binary, genderqueer and two-spirit people, or other queer folks, sexually active and the celibate, and everyone from whom these labels don't apply. Let us all say welcome.
Welcome. Welcome. Welcome.
Welcome.
People of all ages, those about to be born, the voices of small children, all elder bodies and pregnant bodies, all menstruating bodies, and those who are currently bleeding, your ceremony here is honored. Let us all say welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
Welcome.
Your bodies and bodies of all shapes and sizes, of all abilities and challenges, those living with chronic medical condition, visible or invisible, let us all say welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
We welcome you to this learning space if you have a lot of schooling and practice in your background, and welcome you if you haven't done much with school or practice. We welcome you if you attended the first session or watched its recording and joining for us for the first time. Let us all say welcome.
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 Welcome. Welcome.
Your emotions, joy, fear, grief, contentment, disappointment, surprise, outrage, anger, and all else that flows through you, let us all say welcome.
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 We welcome you if you have experienced harm in Work That Reconnects workshops. We welcome you if you have caused harm. We welcome you if you have forgiven or not, been forgiven or not. Let us all say welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
Since this is the, thank you all. This is the second time some of you have heard that, and most of you probably with the recording. I just wanted to share a bit of this diversity welcome, which is something that George Lakey recommended in his book, from the Mendel's process-oriented psychology. And that also is available on the Training for Change website. And the story of this diversity welcome, for me at least, was I heard it for my first WTR Reconnect facilitation experience. And that's something that that was really that moved me. And I felt actually really welcome. Whereas I know that some other people hasn't had that much of an impact for other people. Just wanted to share that. Yeah, and the story of this one is actually, we've had some part of it were coming from a Training for Change workshop which took place at Canticle Forum. And so I just want to give back to the people who wrote that for some part of it, and it was slightly adapted. And there was something really funny about that text that I wanted to share with you. And I'm gonna copy and paste that in the chat. Bear with me. So there was a section that is here. And that was the text that was in the original, version that was read at Canticle Forum. And I did use that a couple of times actually, without actually realizing something. And I had to amend that afterwards, which was that text didn't include European descent. So I'll let you sit with that for a moment. And it's just a way to maybe point out that white dominant spaces sometimes don't necessarily need to welcome themselves, like the white people, the white party. And this is how I interpreted that, and I missed that in the first place. So embedded into our culture. All right.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very subtle notice. And I think that that's part of why we're here, is how do we begin to notice who is left out, and how can we welcome people so that they can bring their whole authentic selves and actually settle down into their bodies. And so I'm going to do a somatic grounding with us. And the first thing I'm going to do is really invite you into your body. So come on in to your body, and do that by feeling, if you would like, your feet flat on the floor, and press your feet down just a little bit, almost like I'm here, I am here, I am here. And then imagine that as you're coming into your body, that you can feel all the different parts of your body, starting with your feet and your ankles and your calves, your shins, your knees, your thighs, the seat you're sitting on, so your pelvic floor. And take a deep breath in, if you will, right now, and ask yourself just to relax. You're safe, you're safe, you're safe, even though we're inside of a difficult conversation. So take a deep breath, and if you would, just open your eyes for a moment and look around you. Turn to the right and see what's behind you, and then to the left, and see that you're safe where you are. And notice where there is a window or a door, so that if you feel like you got to get out, you know that there's a place to do it. So coming back to your body, see if you can, if you would like, to spiral down out of your mind and think about something that you love, that you feel gratitude for, that you're happy about. And as you think of that, spiral down and find a place where you can breathe in and out of your heart as you imagine that you're sitting in your heart. And even ask your heart to relax. taking a deep breath in and out of your chest, right where your heart is. They're proving that the heart muscle is stronger and more intelligent than the mind. The mind is defensive and discerning and critical, and the heart has a resonance vibrating with the level of love. And know that you're loved. And imagine that the love that you have for yourself and for others, and the love that you know that you have for nature, that is amplified, and that you're sitting in your place and you've been welcomed, all of you. Let us know that even though this is one of the most difficult conversations that brings up discomfort, that discomfort is allowing us to actually see what we need to work on. If you're feeling a little discomfort, it means that you're ready to stretch. And anytime you feel like your discomfortability is going over the edge, I welcome you to ground your feet, think of what you love, turn around to make sure you're safe. Because it is in the safety of your own body, the quieting of your own nervous system, where you can hear that you're enough, that if you made mistakes, you've been forgiven. It even gives you the willingness to forgive. So welcome, welcome, and thank you.
Thank you, Matima. So I'm gonna just set some context and just again extend a welcome to all here present live in the different time zones, and a welcome to those watching the recording later as well. So welcome, thank you for watching this afterwards. So this event follows on just a bit of context from the event on the 28th of August, which focused on the document of de-escalating patterns of harm in white dominant spaces, compiled by members of the Anti-Oppression Resource Group. So which explored patterns of harm experienced in work that reconnect spaces. And the document's a living, breathing and evolving document. So yeah, we really invite you to send in feedback and tune-ups. And just an example of some of that feedback that we received gratefully from the last session was around accessibility, and particularly accessibility online, and aware that the De-escalating Patterns of Harm document only names some aspects of accessibility. So we will do our best to sort of name and speak to communication that is just visual as well. Because there's different aspects of accessibility depending on how you're accessing this call, and what device you're on, and whether you can see people, and whether you can see the chat or the visual cues. So as an encouragement, if you're in a breakout room with someone calling by phone, an invitation to please support their inclusion by speaking any text cues. So this is the time to switch, or breakout rooms are closing. And acknowledging that really this online working is a learning and growth edge. So that's a request there. I'm going to speak to the community container, and we sent those agreements out in advance. I hope you've had a chance to look at them. And Joe, could you put the slide up, and I will also just talk to the container agreements. It's important to name them whilst we're all together. So as a member of this learning space, my continuing presence means that I commit to a spirit of curiosity and about showing up for learning and growing. So this is not about perfection, but rather about improving our knowledge and skillfulness so that we may lessen harm. And we'll be unpacking the terms harm and discomfort later as well. It's about having our backs as fellow learners. The intention is to be in learning together and support one another in a learning journey. And we're all at different stages of this learning journey with different experiences. I invite you to take responsibility for yourselves, including your reactions, and attending to what you need for self-care and offering care to others as you are able to. So if you need to stretch or drink or turn off video to self-regulate, calm down or take a pause, please do so. It's about practicing acknowledgement and moving towards repair when I cause harm. Much harm is unintentional, and if there's feedback about harm, it's helpful to acknowledge, see if we can repair and move towards learning and growing. And as Aravinda reflected in the last session, there's plenty more to explore there, and there's plenty more learning journeys to explore about how we can do this together. It's about being willing to be in discomfort as it arises. We experience things newly, or feelings of guilt or shame might feel uncomfortable. So it's inviting you to be present to the discomfort that is there, to be curious and to breathe through this as well. It's about sharing the space, especially by making space for less heard voices. So there'll be open space sharing sessions and also times in the breakout room. So the invitation is to make space for voices that are less heard. The invitation is to being willing to pause while balancing that with other needs. That could be that we have a whole group pause and an invitation to silence and pausing, or a pause for yourself if you need to self-regulate in any way. And an invitation to keep confidentiality. So what's said here stays here and what's learned here leaves here. So we hope this will be a learning space. So please do share your learning, but don't share any identifying characteristics of the content of what people have shared in this space. So thanks for your attention for those community containers. What we're also requesting is that you rename yourself if you are able to, and renaming differs according to which device you're on. It might be that you hover your mouse over your actual name and you have the option to rename or going into participants. But if you can rename yourself, that'd be really appreciated. So the acronyms we're using to rename and to just make identities and experience visible is PGM for people of the global majority, so those not exclusively of European descent, and WB for white-bodied, so those exclusively of European descent. And an invitation to put your name and your pronouns. F if you're a facilitator of the work that reconnects. 1 if you came to the last session on the 28th, and 2 if you watched a recording. And also, I appreciate your names might be getting very long, but yeah, the lands that you're calling on and any land attributions that you wish to make visible as well. So, and that would be really helpful just to give some context for the participants here. And just the last bit of context is just reflecting some key points that came up from the last session together. So there was a request for distinctions between harm and discomfort and sort of more unpacking of that term, and we'll be sharing those terms and we'll be sharing these later. Ritima was making the point of, as facilitators, it's important to facilitate who's in the room and acknowledge that people in the room or online with us experiencing the work that reconnects, their experiences will differ according to their life experiences, their forms of privilege, identity, oppressions, and ability. And that being able to do this well, yes, it does need work and attention and practices. So thank you for attending this session. And also thank you for those who have said, yeah, I'm really happy to convene forms of learning groups and places that we can deepen our practice. We'll be talking about that a bit more later in the session, but also it's an invitation for you to deepen your practice, maybe with just a few people that you facilitate with. Don't need to wait for somebody else to organize something, but if you do, we'll be sharing a way for you to contact people who are also keen to deepen their practice in anti-oppression and unpacking some of these terms later as well. I think that's it for context, so thank you for your attention, but I just want to check if any other facilitators have missed anything in this part.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Just wanted to check on, I think I've seen Helen Sarfati raising your hand. Is that?
Yeah, I just had a question about the document because I read it way back when, and then it was sent out, and I keep hearing that it's a document, the de-escalating document is a kind of document in process, but I don't see a date. And I'm wondering, first of all, since the last time, has it been changed? And second of all, is it going to be changed, and will there be some dates to alert? Because I have a hard copy that I'm making notes on, so I just want to make sure I stay with what's going on. So thanks.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Ellen. Tipping, is it okay with you if I respond to that one?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it was mostly written 2 years ago, so that would be nice to visualize that in the document. A few little updates have been made since then, but we don't actually have a process in place for making additional changes. We're very aware that there are a number of changes that need to be made, and just updates all the time. So I think that we'll return to that in the going forth part of our program today. Is just looking at that as a community, a process for making updates to it. Thanks for asking that question.
So our next kind of activity is to go into breakout room to share some of our experiences with what we've learned so far. So we're going through 3. Sorry, I'm seeing people still joining. Yeah, breakout room of 3 for 10 minutes total. So you have about 3 minutes each to share. And the question that you will be answering and that we will put in the chat are, which 28 patterns have you observed since that event? And what's alive for you now? How many people have you seen? How many people have seen the video? All these questions would be, you can pick any of them or see what you would be willing to share. So we will put you in the breakout room of 3, and then we will come back afterwards.
I'd just like to acknowledge a couple of people just joined. So if maybe you check in with your group when you get in there and update them, because somebody might have just come in and not gotten any of that. Great. Are we ready?
And which video? Do you mean the video of the session, or is there some other video that we were supposed to have watched?
Yes, sorry about that. It's the video of the session, yeah. If you haven't watched, if you were not at the last session. Yeah, it's a bit confusing, sorry about that.
Are we all set to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. I'll send you a prompt at 3 minutes when it's time to switch.
Okay, welcome back, welcome forward, welcome Jill, who just joined us. My name is Aravinda, use she or they pronouns. I'm really grateful to be in this learning space with y'all. And I'd love to hear from just one or two people, if anyone would like to share some of what you just shared in your breakout room, especially if there's a particular pattern that you've been noticing or working with since the August 28th Conversation Cafe. Anyone who'd like to share on that topic? Yeah, Maureen, I see your hand out. Go ahead and unmute yourself. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. I am honored to be in this circle. I then quickly want to really acknowledge one of the participants voicing the levels of oppression within white lineage, within European culture. And I've experienced that myself, and that just to say white and just skin and color doesn't quite cover the colonial oppression that has been internally somatized by so many, and then passing forward the oppression as they come out into the world. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And my own experience of having Indigenous heritage a couple generations, 3 back, but denied by my family because they were afraid of the oppression, and then feeling neither nor in my reconnecting now to who am I. I'm raised in a very privileged position and very soulfully connected to my Indigenous heritage, but have not suffered and feel unworthy to claim it. It's so interesting that the suffering oppression legacy that is part of humanity. And one more little thing is that in the inclusion welcome, we don't welcome the other than humans, the more than humans. And I find that a great omission, because I think we've been so anthropocentric for so long that that we would be well served to include all our relations.
Thanks for what you brought in, Maureen. Is there one other person who'd like to share about a pattern you've been observing or working with the last month and a half? Okay. Well, our facilitation team and planning wanted to respond to the request to go a little bit deeper and unpacking the distinction between harm and discomfort. So Joe Hamilton and I prepared a few thoughts about this, and we're going to be in dialogue with each other and then open it up for wider reflections and comments. So Joe, did you want to just touch in a little bit on the rest of the overview of our time together?
Sure, thank you. And yeah, something I forgot in the context bit is, yeah, just to say that the shape of the next little while together. So as Aravinda said, we're going to unpack harm and discomfort a little bit. And there was also a request to share specific examples of harm. So we're going to be doing that as well, and using breakout rooms to as well. And a role play around those two, and then moving towards next steps. So that's just a very brief overview of the rest of our time together. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Joe. It can be helpful for folks to know, yeah, what's coming up. So yeah, Joe and I want to just have a little bit of conversation about distinguishing between discomfort and harm, because there's questions about that remaining from the last session. And Joe, would you like to jump in now, or would you like me to keep going?
I could jump in. Or were you going to mention the community container bit, or I can?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure. Just thanks, Joe, for sharing verbally the community container. And one of the pieces that we asked folks to be was being willing to be in discomfort. And so, yeah, that's important to name, like when we're asking for it, just a little bit more understanding about what it means.
Great. Yeah, so I'm just going to share a little bit about and really responding to a theme and a request and a question about distinguishing between discomfort and harm, and acknowledging that it's complex and it's tangled and it's racialized as well. So in a culture of white supremacy, some of the privileges afforded to racialized white-bodied folk, particularly middle-class, cisgendered, able-bodied, those who are privileged in different ways of the system, include expecting to feel that they're safe, so free from potential harm, and comfortable and at ease in most spaces. So when discomfort occurs, this can cause alarm or a feeling that it's not safe, that potential harms may occur, and also acknowledging that different life experiences, different traumas may exacerbate the amount of discomfort experienced. And this might be panicky as well, might be very triggering. But in most workshop spaces, harms connected to race will be unlikely to occur for racialized white-bodied people. So yes, people may experience shame and discomfort and embarrassment and guilt, defensiveness, and a fear of being seen or seeing themselves as a bad person. And these feelings are really such a crucial part of the feedback and an opportunity to develop curiosity, to learn tolerance, to grow, and just to really develop that sense of, okay, where are these feelings? How do I experience them? How can I prepare to experience these feelings differently? So the work is to develop that capacities to discern when something is uncomfortable and when harm is happening. So that's my starter little bit. So I'll pass over to you, Aravinda.
Sure. Thanks for sharing all that, Joe. Yeah, I think for me, being willing to be in discomfort is about willing to grow and stretch. It doesn't mean that you need to take harm and just take harm. And so in that conversation we're inviting folks to in this space, we're really focusing on harm through systems of oppression. And so there is one request to be a little bit more explicit with, unpacking terms like social location and position and oppression. And so the teaching that was given to me on oppression is that it's prejudice plus systematic power. And so, we're looking at systematic inequalities in power here. And within any system of oppression, there's different positions within it and social locations based on your identity. So if we're talking about white supremacy, for example, whiteness is centered and privileged in white supremacy, and people of the global majority are oppressed, and it's systematic. Maureen, thanks for bringing in the complexity earlier about there's complexity even within white-bodiedness. And one of the terms that I really appreciate is kyriarchy, which is a little bit wonky, but it points to kyriarchy, Kyriarchy, which points to that each of us will experience privilege in some areas and oppression in others based on our identities. So I can't think of any person that's only one and not the other. We bring a lot of complexity as human beings. So some of the juice for me in this conversation is sometimes people who are in positions of power within a given system of oppression can feel confusion about whether what they're experiencing is discomfort or harm, especially in the context of when impact is being named to them. And so one of the questions that's really helpful for me in being in discernment about if something I'm experiencing is discomfort or if it's harm is asking, what is my position, my social location in the systems of oppression that are at play in this given situation? So if I'm receiving some feedback about impact and my social location, is of a privileged place, yeah, it's just helpful for me to check in about that, because what I may be experiencing is discomfort. And so I want to just unpack this a little bit more, and that one of the ways that systems of oppression operate is by centering the comfort, needs, and experience of people with privileged identities, and it's normalized. And so when that can get challenged or people push back on us and ask us to be accountable for that, it can feel unsettling and destabilizing. And so that could potentially feel like harm. And we're saying that that's more in the category of discomfort, and that a challenge to your your privilege isn't harming you. It's just asking you to be present with your power in that relationship. And so one of the reasons that we really wanted to dig into this today is because one of the patterns of harm that's really prominent in white dominant spaces is defensiveness when feedback about impact is given. And often people with privileged identities, when asked to be accountable for their impact, can get defensive and feel like they're being attacked. And I don't see that as an attack. I see it as a request for accountability. And so, yeah, it felt really important to just dig into that a little bit more. Joe, I just spoke for a while. I'd love to pass it back to you if you have pieces you want to add in and leave in.
Thank you. And there's lots to digest here. I think I just wanted to throw in a few questions for preparing for either being a participant in workshops or facilitating as well, and a curiosity to get to experience or to feel into how discomfort is experienced for you. So some questions of, what does discomfort feel like and in your body, and what emotions or thoughts are connected to it? What do you want to do? And what are your escape routes? So it's about, inviting that kind of getting to know yourself and so your pattern ways, and to develop a bit of space around that when discomfort does arise. And then, an invitation to really explore what could help you develop the capacity to be with discomfort and be open and curious to the learning opportunity, and aware that that's going to be different for everyone according to their experiences. So I'm going to pass it back to Aravinda, and I noticed something coming up in the chat about accountability, but I can't see all of the chat at the moment.
Yeah, I can see it since I'm accessing via a computer, so I'd be happy to bring that in and respond to it. So there's a question from Molly asking if we could say more about the meaning of accountability. Molly, was that addressed to a particular person?
No. You said it's a request for accountability, and it's like, what does that look like? That was where the question came up.
Awesome, thanks for that. So for me, a request for accountability, is about our relational responsibility to one another, and doing our best to not cause harm, or when we have caused harm, is there anything that we can do to offer some amends towards it and move towards healing that rupture. And so, for me, accountability is like self-responsibility and relational responsibility for our impacts on one another. And I have a deep belief in beloved community and moving towards beloved community. And so those are ideals that I have. I think a good question to ask is what are you accountable to? And so for me, it's values that I'm accountable to. And so, I think, it's part of my values framework that to cause as little harm as possible. And when I stray from that, to be present with acknowledging it and offering amends and taking steps for not doing the same thing in the future. So I'd love to open it up if there's anyone else who'd like to bring in what's alive for you now, what's up for you in this piece about looking at discomfort and harm, discomfort versus harm. Any other questions, comments, or reflections? I do see the question in the chat. Okay, great. Thanks, Joe, for putting those in. There's, for people who are joining by phone and can't see the chat, there's a request for Joe Hamilton to put the questions in that Joe asked. Which are, you can't see the chat. What does discomfort feel like in your body? What emotions or thoughts are connected to it? What do you want to do? What are your escape routes? What could help you develop the capacity to be with discomfort and be open and curious to the learning opportunity? All right. Jane, I believe that I'm going to pass it over to you now. You have a process for us that may be of assistance in this moment.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Aravinda. How are you doing, folks? Good? Bad? Different? Okay? How I'm doing is like I actually really need to shake for myself. So if you need to shake, I invite you to shake. Or if you need to yawn, I invite you to yawn. Or if you need to make a noise, I invite you to mute yourself and make a noise. Or whatever you need to do to bring yourself present. I think it was Mutima who said something earlier on about, and Aravinda too, these are difficult conversations to have. And I'm finding this a difficult and challenging forum to be in, and I'm deeply grateful for being here. And what I want to bring our attention to is the fact that each of us, when we're in connection with our own nervous system, we're all the time moving about on some sort of spectrum or continuum. And the place where I like to be, and I'm sure a lot of us, is often what's called a comfort zone, the place where it might be said that we can rest and digest. And this is the place that we probably don't go to very often, some of us in our lives, depending on the inputs that we're getting. And if we move a little bit away from the comfort zone, from the rest and digest, that the next place we might go to is sometimes called the learn and discern. And I guess that might be the place I would hope to be in when I'm having a conversation such as this. It's the place where I'm a little bit more engaged and able to hear what people are saying, able to process what's going on, able to look at something that's being told to me that might contribute to my growth. When we're in the learn and discern zone, often we go on to something that's sometimes called stretch. Now, for some of us, stretch is a great place to be because we're stretching a bit and our learning has more access. For some of us, like people like myself, I have what's called an invisible disability on the learning scale. As soon as I go to stretch, I start to very quickly move into panic. And once I'm into panic, once any of us are into panic, then we have habitual panic responses. There's the classic fight, flight, freeze, and what's often called please and appease. And once we've gone past stretch and we've gone into panic, and we're in one of these fight, flight, freeze or appease, our learning just shuts down. We're not able to engage with our own growth, with our own healing. And so what I'm wanting to do for myself during this conversation is continually ask myself, where am I on this spectrum? And what can I do to keep returning to that place where I'm in my learn and discern? And for me, because it's terror that I go into, it's the shaking. For you, it might be the humming. It might be just knocking your feet on the floor and coming back to what Mutima did at the beginning, where we feel our bottom on the chair, where we feel our feet on the floor. For some of us, it's smiling, because once we smile, whether we kind of mean it or not, our vagus nerve starts to relax. So I'm going to encourage each of us, while we're going into the rest of this time together, particularly when we're hearing about very specific instances of harm, to just monitor our nervous systems and say, what can I do to keep bringing myself back to learn and discern, and not to shoot off to look for a fight or a flight. So I'm going to pass over to Mutima, and after we've had some time there, we'll be going into breakout rooms very briefly, just to do some process, and then we'll be coming back into the large group to share with each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah, that was good to move around and shake a little bit. I've been doing diversity work for a very long time. My signature diversity work is called Healing the Heart of Humanity. And I say one heart at a time, that all of us have been wounded by racism, and we need to heal our racial wounds. So people often ask me, as a Black woman facilitator of the work that reconnects, have I been harmed in the work that reconnects experiences? And I want to say I've actually been harmed, and I've seen harm done, and I've actually caused harm. So there was a question about, well, how much learning does one have to do before you're really ready to, how much extra training, how much learning before you know you're not going to cause harm? And there's no way to prepare not to cause harm, because either unconsciously or consciously, what you say, if you're not aware of who's in the room and really speaking to people where they're seen, feel seen, heard, and appreciated, harm might be caused. So it might not be the intention, but it is the impact. So I'm willing to tell my story about the harm that I have seen in the work that reconnects and felt. And I share it because for the sake of honesty, transparency, and for healing. So oftentimes people say, oh, it's just minimal harm. And it's, you know, because you've had microaggressions in the work that reconnects, it's minimal harm, because people here are here for the good work of the work that reconnects. And I want to say that it's very, it became very apparent to a group of facilitators years ago that this work needed to come into the 21st century, be decolonized, that the social justice issues are the same mindset that comes from the climate justice issues, and that it was very important to be able to do the work and be able to include the intersectionality of social justice issues. So there we have, what is your social location? What is systematic oppression? How does it play out in the world? And people in the work that reconnects kind of sometimes want to have a pass from talking about racial and cultural biases in the system. But if we're going to allow the work to go into communities across the world, we're going to, it's important to begin to be able to speak to whoever's in the room. And that means honoring the diversity that comes in. And there's a question, and this is the question that the Facilitator Development Program is trying to do, which is bring racial justice, social oppression issues into the work, because not having it there is just business as usual. And in the Great Turning, we're not going to get to a thriving environment if racial equality is not embedded in the Great Turning. So that's the reason that it's very important. And I want you to know, I feel like there's a little danger in speaking my truth, because then I become treated like that I am inappropriate because I want to talk about race relationships. I'm threatening because my emotions are high and I'm very passionate about it. And people begin to think that I'm acting aggressively as I try to dismantle and shed light on the history of racism and white supremacy, which we're asking every facilitator of the work to reconnect to do so now, to learn that. So I want to actually begin to say that I've suffered explicit belittling, racial violence, both verbally and nonverbal attacks and name calling for daring to say that racism is alive and well. I have people who are avoiding me because they feel that I'm a perpetrator, not the victim of lifetime years of living and suffering with discriminatory acts. And if as I speak up, and I do speak up, the defensiveness is so strong that I become outcast. And it's happened quite a few times. So I want you to just imagine that I, as the facilitator, am standing in front of the room and I'm sharing my knowledge. And I could give you all my degrees if you want them, best you believe I have them. But somebody could say to me, you don't know what you're talking about, in the front of the whole group, because they have not heard my story or understood my social location and what I've had to go through, that I could bring my experience. So when I share my experience, it's totally discounted and I'm treated like I don't know what I'm talking about. So I find that it's dangerous sometimes to speak out as a person of the global majority, not only in the work that reconnects spaces, but in white spaces. And I don't know a space that's not white, because even when people of the global majority get together, we have to decolonize our minds and we begin to look at how we are actually pitted against each other in the frame of white supremacy and oppression. I was actually fired from a contract that I had to do diversity and inclusion because somebody said, because I talked about racism, that I did reverse racism. So breathe that in with me. I've had people say to me, how dare you call me a racist? And question my upbringing. I don't see color. I'm not a racist. People have said, your communication style is too aggressive. And one time I was at a retreat and that was, well, it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. You're just so angry. And I'm like, oh, because like, I'm the kind of person that when people give me feedback, I actually take it in and try to figure out, does it have any meaning? And at that time, we had a solo day and I went and laid out on earth and I said, am I angry? What am I angry about? And I had just found out that in one day, 227 people were lynched in one town. And I was really angry about that. And then after that solo day, we sat around the fire and I said, I got that feedback and I want you to know that I am angry. And I told them what I just realized And then everybody in the circle made apologies to me. So you never know what is going to come out of being able to tell the truth. And so I'm saying that to say that there are all kind of ways that we can learn together. And then the last thing I think I want to say, except for I want you to breathe with me, because when you hear that I feel like I've had microaggressions, micro insults, micro invalidation. If blame, shame, or guilt comes up, defensiveness, I'm going to ask you to breathe through it. Because breathing through is to allow yourself to calm your nervous system down, come out of fight, flight, and freeze, and be willing to see what is it that it is yours to learn, to be able to be in groups of differences, not even just facilitate, but to be in groups where there's differences, because we all are coming from a different place. So I'm going to pause for a moment and ask Tae-Ping to read the list of harm that we have put together. And it's similar to the document, but we have a shortened list. So Tae-Ping.
Thank you, Mutima. So yeah, we put the list of harm that we witnessed, sometimes in common places, and yeah, just it was to respond to giving examples. So those are specific examples that we've summarized the best we could in terms of phrasing. I'm gonna just read them. So in a training, people of the global majority talked with harm being done to them, and the response was defensiveness. People of the global majority have to take care of white fragility without much support from the facilitation team. That happened. In that training, people of the global majority making a request that was completely ignored. One people of the global majority being put on the spot, asked to perform and did that even though they didn't want to. Facilitator completely dismissing and shutting down a PGM response. And facilitator openly supporting liberal white supremacy activities in front of other people of the global majority.
So take a deep breath and just breathe that in. Thank you, Tae-Ping. Just breathe it in. And Joe, Aravinda, would you do a time check and tell me, do I have time to ask if there are any questions for me? Or Tae-Ping, or about what Tae-Ping read?
Yeah, let's spend a few minutes with that.
Okay. So can we take the pen off so I can go to gallery so I can see everybody?
It's off.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to open it up and I'm going to ask you to sense where you are, what's happening in your body, and follow what's going on in your body. Let's make this real. If you have some discomfort, if you feel like you heard something that is causing your nervous system, let's talk about it so that you can calm yourself and bring yourself back And if you just have a question that you need more clarity, so we're just opening it up to be with you in an authentic way. Anybody have a comment, question, or need anything in this moment? Jill.
Yes, Matima, I was really struck by your sharing, and thank you very much. And some of the wisdom that you shared. One thing was all kinds of ways of learning together. And that resonated for me. And I wonder if you would elaborate on that, just expansive ways, the ways, possible ways.
Yes. So when there's a safe container, when people are really honestly there to actually learn what they know that they don't know. So that's a big thing. You got to get to the place where you have to say, I've been bamboozled. I don't know what I don't know, and I'm willing to learn what I need to learn. So I know. That's a safe environment. So in a safe environment, any question is a good question. I have people say to me all the time, well, I say I don't feel color, I don't see color, and I think it's okay. And then I ask, well, what are you trying to say? And they're trying to say, I try my best to treat everybody with respect. And then I say, well, can you look at me and tell me what you see? Do you see how Black and beautiful I am? Yes. So if you say you don't see color, then you're discounting my Black beautifulness. So that's why it's offensive, because I do have color. So it's like not having any question be too much in the space. Can I say the N word? Hell no, you can't say the N word. You know what I'm saying? That it's inappropriate because it's a demeaning, derogative. And even if you hear other people say it, don't have that come out of your mouth, because somebody's not going to know where your heart is and then accuse you of harming them. So like some people want to say it just in jokingly. But not only don't say the N word, don't say anything derogatory about gay, lesbians, and nobody. So there's a protocol that, you know, with your family, you might be able to relax. And if you hear something, as a facilitator and a co-liberator, it's your responsibility to say, ouch, I think that was hurtful. But we have to build that muscle in order to do that. So the only way to really build that muscle is really getting into the habit of letting go of blame, shame, and guilt. When you're in blaming, then when something goes wrong, you want the responsibility to be on somebody else. And we're always pointing the finger at somebody, but then there's three fingers pointing back at us. So we have to say, what are those three fingers about? And the shame is like, maybe, oh, I did say that. I remember harming that person and harming that person. Well, you got to get over that. Or you're bringing the fear of harming, and then it stops you from being able to connect, make a heart connection. So I had this talk with Joanna Macy, our root teacher, and she said, well, when you talk about all the pain and hurt and suffering you had, people will wonder, why are you doing the work? And she knows my story. The work literally saved my life. And I was filled with so much grief that I had really lost my energy, even my will to live. And I went to a Work That Reconnects group. I was in a 6 months group. And through that process, I was able to grieve and get my juice back. It literally saved my life. And so I'm committed to the work. And yet a group of white and people of the global majority got together and said, we got to do something different because too many people are walking away hurt. The people with disabilities are walking away hurt. Older people, too much ageism, younger people, those old people not listening to us. There's harm, 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 harm. So it's not that we're going to avoid harm, but we're going to learn to respond to it with compassion for self and compassion for others. But if you can't tell the truth about how you're feeling, how's somebody going to apologize to you? If you can't be accountable for what comes out of your mouth, and when you make a mistake, just be able to say, I like Ho'oponopono, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. So those are the kind of expanded things that I was talking about, Jill, and thank you for the question. I'm going to pass.
Yeah, thank you for that. Jean, I think that we're ready to do a little bit of small group processing. Do you feel ready to cue that up?
Yeah, sure. I think I'm inviting us to, we're going to go into pairs just to have 3 minutes each. And the intention when we're together is to just be a witness to each other and to just do as Mutima has suggested, is just to breathe. Notice whether you've got shame, blame, guilt, what's gone on in your system for the last little while, whether you've stayed the whole time and learn and discern, whether you've flipped over into panic, like what's happened for you. And you can speak about it, but also use your body as you're being witnessed by your partner to express what's happened and to take a chance to bring your nervous system back. Okay, so Joe Delamore is going to put us into pairs. We'll have 3 minutes each, and then after that, take the full minute at the end, and you will be brought back to.
I'm sorry, I think it cut out for a second. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
here we go.
Welcome back, everybody. Anybody need a stretch? Make a sound. Yeah. Oh, good. Thank you. Okay. So I'd like to invite a couple of people to just share anything they'd like to from their time in breakout rooms together. Anybody like to share anything? Molly. Just unmute, Molly.
Sorry. Both of us agreed that one of the hardest things is to get that harm is that we are going to cause harm. It can't be avoided. And to somehow come to terms with that, make peace with that. And from what I've read, that is part of white supremacy, is we're supposed to be perfect. So anyway, we both shared that was one of the most difficult things.
Thank you, Molly. It makes me think of an example of when I was in a workshop and I done harm, and the way that I dealt with it was noticing it and kind of celebrating it and being a bit funny about it, like, whoa, I just perpetuated harm, like, whoa. And people laughed a lot, and I know that laughter can often be an offloading of fear. So I wasn't belittling what had happened, and the person that I perpetuated harm on, I checked with them afterwards and they were like, it was fine what you did, but it was just a strange instinctive way of dealing with it. And I learned quite a lot from that, of how important it is to just accept that I'm causing harm. Yeah, thank you. Tricia.
One beautiful thing that my partner offered was kind of a question, but how, when there's a circumstance when somebody is experiencing harm, how can they offer offer that to someone else, the awareness of that as a gift, and that Mutima did a beautiful job of exploring with the person, like, well, what are you trying to say? And that's what that means to me. And it becomes very generative and it's very loving in a way.
Thank you. Thank you, Tricia. Mutima.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that oftentimes in spaces where people of the global majority are facing a lot of fragility, that they actually don't want you to take the burden on trying to educate you. That's why it's so important to be going to for everyone to do their own work. Like, we can stop and think about what we're thinking about, and we make the assumptions based upon our mind immediately judging someone and putting them in a category and believing this and that about them without even, we do it in a matter of seconds when we first meet people. But when you have that feeling like, oh, ask yourself, well, where's that coming from? And oftentimes you'll see that it's just a program response based upon the oppression or your social location, that those people, they never. And so then you don't humanize the person that's in front of you. So there's a way that you can be with people that gives them the opportunity to actually be who they are and not a projection.
Thank you. Thank you, Mutima. I think for me, that is one of the greatest learnings that I continually take away from these conversations, that it's my responsibility to do the work of learning. Yeah, and not expect people of the global majority to step up and do that. Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Jane.
Pass back to you.
Super. Yeah. So I'd love to segue us into a tool that I find particularly helpful for supporting me in my ongoing learning and growth, which is using role plays to practice different scenarios. So on the De-escalating patterns of harm in white dominant spaces Google Doc, the pattern named of defensiveness and feedback about harm is given. One of the suggestions is doing role plays in that for a scenario of that kind. So we wanted to do one of those now, and Mutima has offered to do this with me. And so I wanted to take the first example from the list that T-Ping you shared earlier, of a person of the global majority giving some feedback about harm, and that regrettably being met with defensiveness. And so what I'm planning to do is Mutima and I are going to role play such a scenario, and Mutima has agreed to play the role of a person of the global majority, and I've agreed to play the role of a white-bodied person. And so we'll just go through that scenario as it happened, and then we're going to replay it. So that's one of the gifts of role plays, is that you can try out different things and see how they go. So that's what we're hoping to do. So Mutima, do you feel ready to do this?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so we know what the roles are. And so for this role play, I'm going to say curtains up, Mutima, you're now in your role and I am in mine.
Okay.
Can I just ask Joe to pin you two?
Oh yeah, that's helpful.
Thanks, Joe.
Take a minute for that. Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Thank you. So, Arvinda, I'm getting ready to leave because I just don't feel seen here. I'm raising my hand, and you as a facilitator, you haven't called on me once. When I did start talking, somebody overtalked me. And this group, I'm just not feeling it. I'm gonna leave. I want my money back.
Mutima, that was not my intention at all. I just didn't see you, and
How could you didn't see me? I'm the only Black person in the room. I'm sitting right up front. I raised my hand. You just are ignoring me.
that was not my intention. Okay, I'm gonna hit pause and do a curtain up. So that was a scene of one way that harm has been experienced in the work that reconnects community. Mutima, thank you for doing that with me. And would you feel up for doing it again? And I'm gonna try a different response.
Great.
Okay, all right, so curtains up. Mutima, you are in your role and I am in mine.
Arvinda, I'm gonna leave this workshop because you keep ignoring me. I raised my hand. There's no room for me to talk. When I do talk, people are talking over me. I don't feel that I'm wanted here.
Mutima, I need to just pause for a minute and take a breath because I really want to take in what you're saying. I want to acknowledge you not feeling seen and heard and not called on and my role in that. And I'm going to be present with this because that's not something that I want to continue to do as a facilitator. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. I hear that you're not feeling comfortable and safe in this space, and I'm curious if there's anything that I could do in this moment that could help in any way. And if that puts you on the spot, you don't have to answer now. I just want to know if there's anything that I can do in real time. And yeah, I realize that may have just put you on the spot. All right, I'm gonna pause and do curtains up because in a role play you can do that. In real life it can be more challenging. You may not necessarily have those opportunities, but that's one of the reasons that I find role play so helpful for me as a practice tool, because you can try something on and it may not go so great. And then you can try it again. So yeah. Mutima, do you feel up for sharing outside of the role play? And the answer can be no. Is there something that would have been more helpful to have heard from me?
Well, I just want to say there's a drastic comparison to being defensive, like, oh no, that's not my intent, and the way that you did it the second time. So actually, the first time was kind of like agitation on top of my agitation, the defensiveness, and then the second time, I started thinking, well, maybe I don't have to go because you were genuine with me. It wasn't like, oh, you didn't make it be that there's something else wrong with me because I was feeling what I was feeling.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was taking notes when you were talking earlier because I just found it so helpful about the breathing through when you're inviting us to breathe through, and you're saying that's something that can help calm the nervous system, come out of a nervous system response if we're activated, and see what is ours to learn. And so that's some of the learning I'm really taking with me about hearing feedback about impact is that invitation to like take a breath, and if your nervous system is activated, to see if you can calm down some, and then be curious about what is yours to learn. So thank you for all you shared with us, Mutima. Joe, if you want to take us off of pinned, I'd love to go back into the full group. And I'm going to just switch to gallery view so I can see everyone. And I'd love to open it up if one or two people have any reflections that you'd like to share about this process of role playing, or just about like giving and receiving feedback about harm and impact. Yes, Susan.
I noticed that you didn't actually apologize, which I realize would be my tendency. So I'm curious about that. I would say, oh, I'm just so sorry to hear that. And what can I do to make amends? I don't know. Is that a form of defensiveness, or, you know, I was just curious about the role of apology.
Yeah, thanks for that, Susan. I've been thinking some about, what can be helpful. And so I think after that first step of pausing, if you can communicate acknowledging impact, and absolutely, I think that if it feels authentic, an apology can be really helpful to hear. And then a last piece that can be really helpful is committing to changing your behavior and not doing again. That's something that's really helpful for me in an apology. To be fully transparent, like some of what was going on with me real time was like I was experiencing a little bit of my freeze response. And so I didn't go through all the steps that ideally I would like to when somebody has communicated feedback to me. And that's one of the things that like I find so helpful about role plays is like you can try things and like notice things about your experience and then try them again. So thanks for bringing this in. I think it can be a really helpful piece if an apology feels authentic to offer an apology.
Yeah, although really actually as I was feeling into it, I was realizing, well, wait, is the apology more about me and my feeling and my need to be exonerated? So maybe in a way you're not, I don't know. It's just, I'll be thinking about that a lot, because I know the thing I'm learning in this work is I need to learn to decenter myself, my whiteness, my privilege. And especially, you know, we have the additional privilege of being a facilitator. Right. So I don't know the answer to my question at all. And I appreciate your responding to it, and we'll be thinking. So thank you so much for all of this session. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. Jane, I see your hand up. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Susan, for bringing up the question of apology, because I think for me, as somebody who has a privileged identity of being white-bodied, in the past, as a child, I lived in a country where white people were in the minority, and I spent many, many years apologizing in a very please and appease way. And I realized that my apologies were coming from my own trauma, and the ways in which I were apologizing were all about me. And I think there is a place for apology, and I think it's not until I can say my apology from a point where it's not a cringing, I'm sorry for everything every white-bodied person's done for the last 2,000 years kind of voice, that it's worth me apologizing. And if I can't say it out with that way, then I try not to apologize, but I try to say things more like what Aravinda says.
Looking for my unmute button. Oh, who is unmuted? Who's asking that? Yeah. T-Ping, is it okay with you if Jill's question comes first? Your hand was up first. Okay, yeah, Jill, what's up?
Yeah, there's a thing about apology. What came up for me is I resonated with all that was said, and what came up for me is a way of a sincere apology without the use of the words apology or sorry is for me would be acknowledging Mutima's the sense of harm or dismissal that she articulated as a participant, and just acknowledging that and naming it or reflecting back in a sincere way what she said, that she was harmed. And to me, that is the energy of I'm sorry and I take responsibility.
Thanks for that, Joel. T-Ping?
Yeah, just was wondering, it was a question for for you and Mutima, like if at the end of your role play, you're picking up something that Mutima shared, instead of asking very widely, what can I do, and putting her on the spot. Could it be more like, you said you didn't feel you belong. Is there a particular reason you're willing to share? So picking up that, I thought, because I was connecting that to, PGM thing, which wasn't explicit. So it was maybe a way to, to drive that to that question, if, Mutima was ready to share about that.
Thanks for that, T-Ping. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. I think I'm going to just segue us looking at the time to next steps. So I find role plays a really helpful tool for practicing and growing new muscles and trying things out. So I highly recommend them. And the August 28th Conversation Cafe, we put a link to a spreadsheet for if people were interested in joining a local practice group, they could put their name there to help find other people. So I know that some of the folks in England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales have been convening, but not many other groups have gelled. And so our facilitation team wanted to offer a practice space. We haven't yet settled on the time for that, but once we do, we'll have details that it'll go up on workthatreconnects.org as an event. And for people who agreed to share their emails who registered for this, we can email you with details about that practice space. I just find it so helpful to be in ongoing learning and community about this. Thanks, Joe Delamore, for putting the link into the spreadsheet. Another way to continue sharing and learning is there's also a Google Doc, community sourced, where anyone's invited to put in resources that you find helpful in your learning journey. And there's a link to that also, which I believe Joe will drop into the chat. Thank you, Joe. And one thing I wanted to also let you all know about is that I've been working with my friend Jana to develop a training on intervening when harm happens with a special focus on microaggressions. And we led a first one in the beginning of October, and we're going to lead another one January 30th, just for Work That Reconnects facilitators. So that's another offering that will be available. Registration isn't yet open for it, but once it is, it'll be up on workthatreconnects.org. So yeah, lots of opportunities for being in ongoing learning and practice. And I just want to check in with the rest of the facilitation team. Was there anything I'm missing here that we wanted to share in this next step piece? Okay, well, seeing no additions, I just want to thank you all for showing up for this conversation. I've been preparing for this conversation for years in some ways of my life experience, and I'm going to be continuing it for a long time. Earlier I'd said, like, the group of people who put together the original De-escalating patterns of harm and white dominant spaces document doesn't have a process for like making additions to it. And so we'd like to come up with one, because there's a lot that's not there. As long as that list already is, there's a lot that's not there, and we'd love to just have it continue to be a living document and space for learning and sharing. So to be continued on a process for adding to it. And I'm just checking The chat, yes. We can put links in the follow-up email. And okay, the current link doesn't let you add your name. So we can work with, if we don't get access change for that now, definitely in the email that goes out, we'll have that. So thank you all so much for joining. And I believe, Joe, I pass it to you for a network goodbye, and then Mutima for our facilitation team goodbye. Unless Mutima, I see your hand, do you want to go now?
Yes, I do. So this is the way that I would like to do a closing. You know, the work that reconnects has music. So there's a couple of artists that have taken the spiral and put music all around the spiral. And there's a young woman named Jen Mizell, who's a great musician. And I'm going to play one of her songs for you. And I'd like for you to listen to the song, but I also would like for each one of you to put into the chat one thing you appreciate about the workshop, or what you're looking forward to. What is your very next step in your own learning around de-escalating harm? So we're going to open the chat and we're going to put the music on. We're going to listen to the song, but at the same time, I want you to multitask and write one thing you appreciate about the time today, or share your next steps. What's the very next thing as you are seeing with new eyes and going forth? So, are you ready, Joe? Yeah.
Does it mean to be free from these prison walls? And what is the cost of separating myself from you? And is this privilege an illusion created by the masterminds of resistance to change? And if I was born to believe I was special, was I really just locked in a special cage? And who really has the sickness? Could this be what I have been avoiding all along? And how come I can't remember where it is that I come from? Pages of our human family book, Slavery and Massacre. It's hard to take a look. The war began, we don't know why, but it just keeps going, an eye for an eye. It's in our blood, it's in our bones, it boils and it brews. Yet something like love is born in every baby new. The war lives on if we live in denial. The pain's inside if we don't grieve and reconcile. There are ways, we've seen it done before, like South Africa after apartheid. Pain was heard and not ignored. Honesty, forgiveness, we all want to heal. And especially me, white folks, we have to keep it real. What's come before, it's not my fault, but do I uphold this whiteness cult? I reclaim my power by knowing my culture and not by stealing other spirits like a vulture. I'm like a swan, a graceful bird in white. I am equally the raven weaving spells through the night. Let's talk about it, race, and the shame I feel in my face. The time I left my friend in the dust so I could win the race. This is not a fairy tale, this is not a ritual. This is a worldwide illusion being brought to its funeral. There is no human with more or less worth, like no grain of sand that deserves less to be on this earth. And I'm sorry for all of the hurt I've caused, and I swear on the graves of my ancestors I will work to see it undone.
Jen Mizell. Woohoo! So let us close. Thank you for all that you've put into the chat. It means a lot to hear how you're leaving. And let's close by saying this is the beginning of us really doing our work in the Great Turning. Or if we turn and everyone's not included, then the seeds that we're going to plant, it's not going to harvest what it is that we need. So I want to thank you on behalf of all of the facilitators for coming. And thank you for those of you who will be joining us again. And I want to close by saying that difficult conversations can be had. We can learn to treat each other with much more compassion, because this is the life we made for, because we're in it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much to Mutima, Siping, Aravinda, Joe, and Jane. Thank you on behalf of the Work That Reconnects Network. And oh, I just put something in the chat that is only half showing up. I'll try that again. So it's supposed to say thank you first for joining us today. And if you'd like to continue this conversation, we've dedicated a spot to it in our online community forum. So you can join us there. If you're already registered on the website, either as a community member or facilitator member, you can just pop right over there on your account page. If you're not already registered, you can register at this link here. There's also a link to the feedback survey for this event. So this is a way to provide feedback to the facilitation team and also to the network for this overall program. So please take the opportunity to share in that way. And if you'd like to save the chat, this is the moment. If you want to kind of save and capture anything that was shared there, there's 3 little dots at the corner of your chat window, and you can click on that and press save chat before we leave here. All right, I think that's all then.
Let us unmute ourselves and say goodbye and say whatever you want to say, but let us hear your voices as you leave.
Gracias.
Bye. Blessings. Blessings.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Well.